Well, now that we have a better understanding about some of the issues that were involved with this and the planning that went into it as well, I'd like to move into the second segment, talking about the implementation phase. And maybe the best way to start off is to ask you, David, again, about how you went about implementing the central management software in Olathe in the first place.
Sure. The implementation was really pretty straightforward. We approached this by kind of evaluating the high-use corridors and then including the existing transit routes as part of our criteria. Because of limited funding, though, we decided the initial deployment would consist of about 75 intersections, and the CMS system actually will only work with the 700 series discriminator, so we had quite a few of the 500 series that we had to swap out in different locations or purchase new ones. The discriminators utilize the serial communications at this point, or at the time we implemented, so we had to also purchase serial to Ethernet converters at the locations that would allow connectivity to our ATMS system, which is Ethernet-based. And then the technicians in the field also wired up the GreenSense wiring harnesses, and they were installed really to inform the discriminator of what phases or directions of the intersection were green and exactly what time. This portion is important for use in liability cases and also for future transit usage.
Now, every city has its own unique attributes and circumstances, but for the city of Olathe, what factors, if any, did you have to plan around, consider, or make adjustments for?
Well, we didn't have any inherent to the city itself. The one problem we did run into initially was when Dave Johnson came down and installed the system software on one of our existing servers at the TOC, right out of the box we had some communication issues that centered around the interface cables between the serial to Ethernet device and the discriminators. And while some of the cables worked, others didn't seem to, so it wasn't very consistent. So we decided to address the cable issue before any more integration efforts would continue. And then once new cables were tested and deployed, Dave came back down and everything went really very well.
Encouraging. Obviously, when you're doing something like this, you're not working in a vacuum. There are other agencies that you have to work with to implement. What other agencies did you have to work with to involve the implementation, and why did you have to work with them?
Well, we coordinated with our fire and EMS, and because we had to collect all the information regarding encoding numbers and their associated vehicle information, that all gets put into the system as well. And then we partnered with our vehicle maintenance group, who test the existing emitters as part of the vehicle's preventive maintenance checks and log necessary information. And they're also responsible for deploying new emitters on new vehicles. So those are our three partners, actually, that we worked with.
Now, looking back over that implementation that you went through, how would you characterize it? I'm sure everything was absolutely perfect. There were absolutely no problems, and it went exactly according to plan, or is that not exactly right?
Well, you're pretty close, Bernie. I mean, other than the cable issue, everything did go very smoothly. The staff for GTT came down and very knowledgeable, and once we had the cables figured out, everything went very, very well, and I was very surprised by how well the system ran, how easy it was to install the client software and the system software.
Jim or Dan, what about from your perspectives?
Well, I couldn't give Dave and his staff any higher grades. I think his technicians are top quality, and I think it was due to a lot of their efforts that the system went in as easily, if you will, as it has. A smooth transition into these systems usually is not the easiest thing to do. And like I said, I think Dave and his technicians did an outstanding job. So I give them high marks for that. As far as did it go smoothly? Yes, quite smoothly. And my expectations were that Olathe have a central management system that they could utilize and that they would actually work with. And they got that, and I think so. Yes, it's been a success.
From GTT. Yeah, as a vendor of these hardware and software solutions, our goal is to exceed expectations, and that's why it was so rewarding to work with David and his crew, because they had wonderful ideas for us and high expectations. So it was really a challenge to do better than they were asking, and they set us high goals. And what we saw when we went to their traffic management center was that they're already using some wonderful tools, and ours fit in my mind, hand in glove, because when we put it up and we had David said to us, well, we'd like to get this down to a 1 second real-time polling rate. That was hard to do, but we got it there, and the reason it was so important to them, is if I understand the situation, was they wanted to see calls as they came in so that they could correlate it with their dispatching system. And then they could say, well, this is a valid call, or, well, we've got a call, but it's not really been dispatched, so this could be a system abuser. There are ways for people to abuse the system if it's not completely coded. Now, David's done an excellent job of tightening their system down, but they want to make sure that maybe the EMS driver, let's say after they've been to the hospital, they're not going to the restaurant later and they want to get there faster, just for an example. So this gives them a real finger on the pulse of the actual usage of the system. Whereas previously we talked about, is the system functioning correctly? Now the question is it being abused? And we believe we now have something there so that they can really see how the usage is occurring in real time.
Well, moving now into our final segment, segment 3, where we're looking back, but also importantly looking to the future. And maybe the best way to start that off is with David. After all this is said and done, what do you see have been the key benefits for the Olathe Traffic Division that you've experienced and that you would share with others?
Sure. I think from an operational perspective, these types of subsystems play an integral part of an overall ATMS system. And anytime you can manage your equipment, for the most part remotely, this along with the ability to be made aware of problems when there's detector issues or other equipment, it's saved us considerable man hours. And the current usage that Jim referred to in knowing in near real time helps to ensure the integrity of our system as well. That's what really caused us to look at some of these systems hard, was when the MERT systems and others were coming out, and it was available access to almost anyone to have those type of systems and to be able to lock them down and secure our network. So having access to the history logs helps us to confirm, what we have just assumed in the past. When someone calls in to complain about a long wait time or getting skipped, we can immediately see if they were experiencing effects of a preemption call as a cause.
Now, David, if someone were to come to you from a similar-sized city to Olathe and said that they're considering preemption in central managed software, what advice would you give them?
Well, justifying preemption itself seems pretty straightforward. Response times are critical in emergency services, and it's not only response times, but it's the safety of the responders themselves. If I could start a program from scratch, I would work closely with the users of the system to establish maybe some opportunities for cost sharing, and then I would also make sure that whoever's responsible for operating and maintaining the systems is brought into the process early on, that they are well trained in the technology. Also, work with your surrounding communities to develop an encoding scheme so that mutual aid efforts are maintained across the different jurisdictions. And for those communities that have operations staff or have a functioning TOC system, to me, the software easily pays for itself over time in reductions in staff time required to maintain and operate the system.
Dan, anything that you would add?
Well, I think it's real important, having been an engineer myself with a city in Overland Park, Kansas. I think you got to look at systems that offer features, advantages, and benefits, and then you check out the history of the company that's providing the system. I think you need to look at customer service and support, because you don't want somebody just to drop a system on your lap and then walk away. So I think that anybody should be looking at that. Agencies should look to companies that they can trust.
Okay. Now, again, we've looked into the past, we've talked about advice, but now looking into the future, which is always a bit murky, but things become clearer as they go along. What new technology trends are you researching that you'd like to implement at some point? David?
Well, personally, I've been beating the drum for Ethernet on every single device that's imaginable within a traffic signal cabinet, just for easy connectivity to, and particularly for our discriminators. And I've been told they're going to be out soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. And it's going to eliminate the need for some of these extra devices we currently have to use. We're also going to be looking at purchasing the dual mode discriminators. They have the ability to move, give us the ability to move in a direction if we decide to go with the GPS style. And then transit, in all likelihood, is going to become a user of our system as well. Fortunately, the 700 series provides us the tools we need for that application. It's just a matter of programming the discriminators with some additional settings.
And Jim, I know you have an even clearer picture of what's going on in that crystal ball. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the new technology and the research that you guys are involved with.
Yeah, you're right, Bernie. Global Traffic Technologies is always trying to improve our product. And, David said it to begin with. The only problem he had was with the serial devices. So what Central Management System needs is really Ethernet. And what we have to have for the old phase selectors is serial. So it's a lot more than a bump in the cable when it doesn't work. And it's another device that can fail. So the new multi-mode phase selectors that David referred to, they're coming out with Ethernet directly on the card itself. So we can go straight into it, eliminating a point of failure, reducing the need for extra equipment and all the things that go with that. So, that's a major thing, but let me talk a little more about the multi-mode phase selector because, as David also mentioned, you can transition from IR to a GPS-based system. And, people ask themselves, well, why is GPS so important? Just because it's modern? Well, it is modern, it is new, but that's not the reason. It has inherently secure technologies that people can't defeat. We also have the ability to precisely locate vehicles with the global satellites that are circling the globe, and these will tell us exactly where a vehicle is in relation to the intersection. That allows us to be very precise, and we can even do things like if the driver has his left or right turn signal on, we can forward that call to the next intersection that they'll be going to. And this lets them, the phase selectors do things like tell the controller, well, here's a preemption that's coming your way, so now it's got more time to clear the pedestrian walks, transition to the best state, because these vehicles are able to report their estimated time of arrival rather than just, as with the old IR system, a threshold as far as the infrared signal is, how it's being received. So major new capabilities in terms of technology. And as David also mentioned, this is going toward transit, probably in Olathe. And, for fast-moving police or EMS vehicles or fire, the preemption is important to get as soon as possible. But for transit, it's another ballgame that if there's a green light and the bus is coming toward it, persist the green if he's within range. Or otherwise, if it's red, we don't change it to green. So doing less disruption. And that kind of control is really only possible when you have GPS sort of technologies. Well, I shouldn't say it's really only possible, but it's most effective when you can precisely manage your vehicles. We've got a site on the West Coast that has really told us that, in the Northwest, we have to be worried about weather, and your GPS system is just solid. We don't have any sorts of issues with weather conditions. And that's another reason that when you use this for transit, you want to keep those buses rolling efficiently and saving carbon and gas.
And David, I wanted to ask you as we get set to wrap up, how you believe the project's going to impact the citizens of Olathe?
Well, Bernie, I think a couple ways. By utilizing these types of systems, we're able to actually save staff time in these areas, and but we're also able to maintain a pretty high level of service, which is very, very important to us here in Olathe. This translates into less requests for additional staffing needs in the long run, and most importantly, though, to me, the response times for emergency personnel getting to where they need to go quickly and safely are kept to a minimum, even in a heavy traffic situation. So, if you've ever called for help and had to wait for someone, it can really seem like it's taken forever. And shaving a few minutes off of the arrival time by ensuring a well-functioning preemption system can make a difference in the outcome.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to once again thank David Kumke, the Traffic Signal Operations Supervisor for the City of Olathe, Kansas, Dan Wright, the owner of Mid-American Signal, as well as Jim Malnati, Senior Systems Software Engineer for Global Traffic Technologies, the manufacturer of Opticom, the leader in traffic signal priority solutions. Thank you all, gentlemen.